Hi, my name is Luna. I used to believe that if you worked hard, treated people kindly, and lived modestly, life would protect you in return. That was my mistake. The day I woke up in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling with a foggy mind and an IV in my arm. Everything I had built, everything I thought was mine was already gone. It was early spring in Portland, Oregon. I had been in a coma for nearly 3 weeks, following a brain aneurysm. The doctors said it was a miracle I survived. But at that moment, survival felt less like a blessing and more like a punishment. I couldn't speak at first. My hands trembled. My memories came back slowly. In flashes, my garden, my kitchen, my daughter Natalie, and my son-in-law, Jacob. Jacob had been helping me handle things when I got sick. That's what I was told. That's what I believed. The first strange feeling came the day I asked the nurse, Carla, to call Natalie for me. Carla looked at me too long before answering, her eyes shifting. She hesitated. That pause, it was like a hairline crack in glass, small, almost invisible. But something told me it would shatter if I pushed. Natalie didn't come that day, or the next. It was always Jacob who picked up the phone. Always busy. Always explaining. He said they were getting things in order. He said not to worry. But it was the way he said it that began to rot something in my gut. His voice was smooth. Practiced. Too perfect. Like he'd been rehearsing it in the mirror. I asked Carla if she could check my mail. I just wanted to see my bills. My letters. Anything familiar? She hesitated again. Then she leaned in and said quietly, You don't have a mailbox anymore. Mrs. Luna. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. When I finally convinced a hospital social worker to show me my records, just basic paperwork, I saw an address I didn't recognize. It wasn't my home. It was a condo downtown. A condo I had never seen, let alone owned. The pit in my stomach became a canyon. I demanded to speak to my lawyer. Except I didn't have one anymore. According to the records, I had signed over power of attorney to Jacob 3 days after my surgery. 3 days. When I was unconscious. When I couldn't even blink on command. I kept asking myself, how, why, how could someone do this? Someone who stood in my house, who ate at my table, who called me mom. The answer, of course, was simple. Because I let him. I trusted him. The hospital administrator confirmed the worst: my house. My beautiful, paid-off cottage in the Alberta Arts District had been sold. The bank account I had carefully built over 40 years of teaching elementary school was drained, my pension redirected, my name erased from everything I once owned. I wasn't just recovering from a medical emergency, I was waking up into a life that didn't belong to me anymore. And the worst part, my daughter, my sweet Natalie, she wasn't just absent. She was silent. She hadn't called. She hadn't visited. And if what the papers said was true, if she had co-signed anything, even unknowingly, then she might have been used too. Or maybe she helped. That night, lying in the hospital bed, I wept, not just from the pain in my head or the weakness in my body, but from the betrayal that had no name. I cried quietly so the nurses wouldn't hear. I didn't want them to think I was broken. But I was. I didn't know it then. But that moment, when I felt most powerless, most humiliated, most stripped bare, was the moment something inside me started to shift. I didn't know how yet. But I was going to take my life back. Even if I had to start from nothing. Even if no one stood beside me. My name is Luna. And this is how I began again. The days that followed were gray. Not just outside the hospital windows, but in my chest. Everything tasted metallic. The food, the air, even my memories. It was like I had to relearn the shape of my own life. And all I could find were jagged edges. I started physical therapy with a woman named Dana. She was kind but firm, always saying things like, "One breath at a time." Luna. I wanted to scream every time she said it. Breathing wasn't the problem. It was trusting the world again. I didn't speak to Jacob after the revelation. I told the nurses not to let him in. I told Carla, the night nurse, everything. Her reaction was quiet, but her eyes burned. "He forged the papers while you were under sedation," she whispered. That's criminal." I nodded, and my voice cracked for the first time in weeks. "I think my daughter helped him." Carla didn't say anything right away. She just held my gaze and said, "Then you're going to need help. Luna, the kind that doesn't wear scrubs." That was the first time anyone in that building made me feel like I wasn't crazy. A few days later, Carla wheeled in a visitor without asking. A woman in her early 30s with a sharp blazer, sneakers, and a laptop tucked under her arm. She had wild red curls and a confidence I hadn't seen since my teaching days. "Luna," Carla said, "this is my cousin, Erin. She's a legal investigator. She owes me a favor." Erin pulled up a chair and opened her laptop before I could even say hello. "You mind telling me what happened?" she asked. So I did. All of it. The aneurysm, the forged papers, the house, the bank, the empty pension, the silence from Natalie. She didn't flinch once. When I was done, she looked at me the way a teacher might look at a child who just told the truth for the first time. "Well?" she said, typing fast. "They left fingerprints. Digital ones. And if what you're saying is true, we might have a case for elder fraud, power of attorney abuse, and possibly identity theft." I blinked. That was the first moment I realized I might not be entirely helpless. The hospital let me discharge into assisted recovery early. Thanks to Carla's insistence and Erin's plan, I moved into a modest recovery center near Tigard. Quieter than the hospital and just far enough away from Jacob's orbit. Erin visited often. She brought documents, screenshots, voice recordings. She tracked emails, followed the title transfers, found the notary who witnessed my signature. The notary didn't even remember the meeting because it never happened. As Erin peeled back each layer, it felt like watching a crime documentary about someone else's life. Except it was mine. And every click of her keyboard was a reminder I had been betrayed, not just by someone I trusted, but by a system that never even questioned it. One evening, she pulled out a folder and said, "You're not going to like this." Inside was a signed agreement between Jacob and a private care agency, a plan to move me into long-term elder housing, a facility 2 hours away, with full financial control granted to him. "I think," Erin said carefully, "he never expected you to wake up." I didn't cry. Not that time. Instead, I stared out the window and whispered, "Then maybe it's time I act like someone who did." That was the moment the fog in my head began to lift. I started walking more, eating, sitting with others in recovery, listening to their stories. Some were lonely. Some were broken in ways I couldn't even imagine. But all of them were still here. Still trying. That mattered. Erin came one afternoon with a USB drive and said, "I want to show you something." It was a security video from a bank. Grainy but clear enough. It showed Jacob walking in, holding a stack of papers. Papers I recognized. He smiled at the teller, leaned across the counter, and withdrew a large cashier's check. The date the 3rd day of my coma. "Gotcha," Erin whispered. That night, I sat by the window of the recovery center and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. A spark. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even revenge. It was the feeling of a woman who had been erased, slowly rewriting herself. I wasn't whole yet, but for the first time since waking up, I wasn't afraid. The next few weeks were quiet, but the kind of quiet that holds thunder behind it. Every morning, I woke up and made my bed, something I hadn't done since the hospital. A small act, but it felt like reclaiming space, ownership, identity. One pillow, tucked corners, like a flag planted on foreign land. Erin kept digging. She was relentless. She discovered that Jacob had opened 2 joint accounts under both our names, accounts I never signed for. He funneled nearly $60,000 through them over 6 months while I lay in a coma. But here's where things turned. Erin introduced me to someone new, her younger sister, Taylor. Taylor was a sharp, fast-talking attorney who had left corporate law to start a nonprofit for elder justice cases. She specialized in situations like mine. When we first met, Taylor sat across from me, legs crossed, eyes serious. "Luna, I've seen this before, but rarely this bold. He thought no one would look twice because you were silent. But you're not anymore. Are you ready to fight?" I didn't answer with words. I just looked her dead in the eye and nodded. That day, Taylor filed a civil complaint with preliminary evidence. We weren't pressing charges yet, that would come later. Right now, our goal was to freeze any remaining assets and prevent Jacob from liquidating the last of my pension. She also sent a formal letter to my daughter, Natalie. It broke me inside to do it. But I had to. I needed to know. Weeks passed. No reply. No call. Not even a message. The silence said enough. One evening, while I was reviewing papers with Erin, Carla dropped by unannounced. She brought a tray of lemon bars, my favorite, and a stack of printed emails. "These were in your old hospital file," she said softly. "I thought you should see them." They were from Jacob to the hospital's finance department requests to reroute my billing information. Transfer. Power of attorney. Approve facility changes. All done within 10 days of my aneurysm. He'd been planning for this. I remember pushing the papers away and whispering, "How do you look at someone you love and see?" Opportunity. Carla said nothing. She just took my hand. Later that night, Erin showed me something that brought the thunder rumbling. An anonymous tip had come through her firm's website. A woman claiming to have once worked for Jacob on a home renovation. She said he had paid her in cash for demolition work on a house, my house, before it was ever legally sold. She had photos, text messages, dates that lined up with the days I was in ICU. "He gutted your home while you were still fighting for your life." Erin said, "The sale wasn't final. He didn't even wait." That's when the fear in me finally turned into something else. Resolve. I stopped being afraid of confrontation. I asked Taylor to prepare a deposition request. I started reviewing my old documents, tracing signatures, dates, and paperwork. Like a detective, retracing a crime scene. I also began writing in a notebook every night, just simple reflections, memories, thoughts. At first, it was therapy. Then it became evidence. I remembered conversations, details, things I had brushed off as meaningless. They became a trail. I also called Natalie. She didn't answer, but I left a message, my voice calm, not angry. "I don't know what part of this you knew. And maybe you were scared or confused. But I need you to understand something. This isn't just about a house. This is about who I am. I'm still your mother. I'm still here. And I'm not disappearing quietly." 2 days later, Taylor received an email. From Natalie. 5 words. I think I made a mistake. No excuses. No denial. Just a sentence that cracked something wide open. Taylor scheduled a video call. Natalie showed up with her eyes red and her voice shaking. I didn't know he was doing all of it, she said. He told me it was to protect you. That it was temporary. He said you wouldn't wake up. I didn't yell. I didn't even cry. I just asked her one question. Did you ever ask about me? She paused. No, she whispered. We sat there, thousands of miles apart, bound by pain and silence. But something had shifted. That night, as I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw someone I almost didn't recognize. Not because she was broken, but because she was returning. The call with Natalie opened a door, a crack, a fragile fracture in the wall between us. But it was enough. Enough to let light in. And enough to let the truth out. Taylor moved fast. She filed the official motion for a full deposition of Jacob, citing financial fraud, elder exploitation, and falsified documents. The judge approved it. We had a date. 1 room, 1 table, no way out. The morning of the deposition, I wore the navy blue blazer I used to teach in, the one I hadn't touched since retirement. I wanted to remember who I had been before the coma, before the betrayal, before I was erased. Jacob walked into that room like it was a business meeting. Calm, arrogant, his sweet pressed, hair slicked back, smile faintly smug. But I didn't flinch. Taylor started the questioning. She laid out the timelines, showed the bank transactions, the forged documents, the text messages from the contractor who gutted my house while I lay unconscious. She moved like a surgeon, precise, calm, cutting. Jacob deflected, claimed it was all for Luna's protection, that I was mentally incapacitated, that the doctors gave no hope. Then Taylor brought out the video, a security clip from the real estate office, recorded 3 weeks after I had been admitted to the hospital. In it, Jacob signs documents, laughs with the buyer, and makes a call where he says, "We'll be rich by summer." The silence in the room was loud. Jacob shifted in his seat. His lawyer whispered something, but the damage was done. Then Taylor turned to me. "Luna, would you like to speak?" I stood up. My hands were steady. "Jacob," I said, "I trusted you with everything, not just my money. My house, my legacy, my daughter. And you sold it like scrap." He didn't respond. I continued, voice firmer. "I lay in that hospital bed fighting to breathe. You were busy tearing apart everything I built. And the worst part is, I think you believed I'd never wake up. You gambled my life away." Taylor closed the file in front of her. "We'll see you in court," she said. The deposition went viral in legal circles. After a law blog picked it up, suddenly, my name wasn't just a victim on a paper. It was a woman who spoke up, who rose. Natalie came to visit a week later. She looked different, lighter, somehow nervous. We sat on my porch, the one Jacob had tried to sell out from under me. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said. "I was afraid. I believed him. And I didn't know how to face you once I realized I was wrong. I didn't rush to forgive her. But I listened. And that was a start. Later, I sat with Carla and Aaron, watching the sun dip behind the trees. There was a kind of silence between us, not empty, but full, of everything we'd fought through. I turned to them. "How did I let it go so far?" Carla smiled gently. "You didn't let anything. You survived. And when it was time, you spoke. The civil court ruled in our favor 2 months later. Jacob was found liable for financial fraud and ordered to repay every dollar. My name was restored to the house title. His assets were frozen. And Taylor's nonprofit received a grant to help more women like me forgotten, underestimated, and left behind. I didn't celebrate with champagne or cake. I sat in my reclaimed living room, journal on my lap, and wrote, "They tried to erase me. But I remembered who I was, just in time." The fight wasn't just legal. It was personal. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Not because I won, but because I had reclaimed something much deeper than a house or a name. I had reclaimed my voice. 2 months after the court ruling, I stood in my backyard for the first time in years. The wind carried a crisp spring scent, the kind I used to love before everything turned dark. I ran my fingers along the old wooden fence that Jacob had once told the contractor to tear down. They never got to it. Maybe some things refused to be destroyed. The house was mine again. But more than that, my sense of self had returned slowly. Like a tide. Every box I unpacked. Every picture I rehung. Every flower I planted was a small defiance. A way of saying I'm still here. Natalie started coming around more often. Sometimes she just sat on the porch. Sometimes she helped me garden. Sometimes we didn't say a word. Then, one day, she asked the question I never thought I'd hear. "Mom, would you ever think about moving in with me and Ava?" I looked at her, unsure. Ava, my granddaughter, was 8 now. I had missed years. Holidays. First steps. Kindergarten art shows. And yet, here was a door being cracked open. "I don't know," I replied softly. "Maybe you two should move in here instead. It's time this place filled with laughter again." She smiled through glassy eyes. We'd love that. A month later, Ava danced barefoot across my hardwood floors, while Natalie cooked dinner in the kitchen. The house no longer felt like a tomb. It was alive. With music. With warmth. With second chances. But something else stirred in me. Something unresolved. Carla came by with iced tea one afternoon and found me sitting in the living room, surrounded by old letters, medical bills, and stacks of mail I'd avoided for too long. "You okay?" Luna sighed. "I can't stop thinking about how many women are out there, like me, who don't wake up in time, who don't have a Taylor, or a Carla, or anyone." She sat beside me. "Then maybe that's your next chapter." It hit me like thunder. I didn't survive just to rebuild. I survived to reach back. That night, I opened my laptop and started typing. The idea was simple, a foundation. One built not on pity, but power. A space for women over 50 who had been silenced, scammed, discarded, or forgotten. A place for legal help, community, and dignity. I named it the Luna Project. At first, it was just a website. Then, an email list. Then, a weekend workshop. Before long, local news picked up the story of the woman who rose from a coma to build a shelter of second chances. Donations came in. So did letters. One from a woman in Georgia who was evicted while undergoing chemotherapy. Another from a retired teacher in Oregon whose son had drained her savings. A grandmother in Texas who woke up one day to find her car and bank account gone. They wrote to me like I was a lighthouse. But I wasn't. I was just someone who had been lost at sea too. I spoke at local libraries, then colleges. Then, to my surprise, I got invited to a national women's conference in Chicago. Backstage, I stood in a quiet corner, clutching my speech. The coordinator peeked in. Luna, they're ready for you. I stepped onto the stage to a room of 2. Oh, 0 women. Some young. Some silver-haired. Some smiling. Some broken. I didn't use a teleprompter. I told them my story. From the coma. To the betrayal. To the reclaiming. But more than that, I told them this. Maybe they told you it was too late. That your time had passed? That you were too old? Too weak? Too alone? They lied. You are still here. And as long as you're breathing, your story isn't done. The room stood, clapped. Some cried. And I cried too. Not because I was proud, but because I remembered how close I'd come to being erased. Back home. I tucked Ava in one night. She looked up at me, wide-eyed. Grandma, are you famous now? I laughed. No. Sweetheart, I'm just loud in the right way now. She grinned. I want to be loud too. Good. I thought, be loud. Be unafraid. That weekend, I planted sunflowers with Natalie in the backyard. She asked if I missed the quiet. No. I said, the quiet almost killed me. I like the noise of healing better. As the sun dipped low, I looked around at the life we had built from the ashes. I wasn't just back. I was reborn. And this time, I wasn't alone. Some stories are meant to entertain. Others, to warn. Mine, I believe, is meant to awaken. Because if you had told me years ago that I would one day stand on stages, hold the hands of broken women, or be called a beacon by strangers, I would have laughed. Or maybe I would have cried. Back then, I didn't even believe I deserved another chance. But here's the truth. Survival is not enough. Silence is not healing. And age is not the end. I was nearly erased in my own home, not by force but by manipulation, isolation, and shame. And no one talks about how easy it is for that to happen to someone like me. A woman in her 60s. A former teacher. A grandmother. I was supposed to know better. I was supposed to be wiser. But life doesn't wait for your wisdom to catch up when trust is weaponized against you. And so, to anyone listening, maybe watching this while folding laundry, or driving home from work, I want to leave you with this. Do not let anyone write your ending, but you. If you're feeling stuck in a relationship, a job, a quiet despair, no one else sees, hear me now. You are not too old, too tired, or too broken to begin again. The world may not hand you a second chance, but you can make one, even if your hands are shaking when you reach for it. There was a time when I thought my only worth was in how quietly I could endure. Now I know better. Now I know that endurance is not silence, it's action. It's calling a friend, asking for help, telling your story, standing back up even when your knees ache and your heart is still raw. And if you've made it this far in my story, then maybe you were meant to hear this. You matter. Your voice matters. And what happened to you does not define what happens next. I am Luna. I was once invisible. Now, I speak. And I hope truly. I hope that my voice makes room for yours.